have one of those. Do you have one?
Well, welcome. We're very happy to reminisce with all you fellas and ladies. We're here mainly to carry you very rapidly through the early history of ACEP, some of the characters that we met along the way, some of the stories that sort of evolved out of those meetings, and we're going to hopefully not tell too many lies, but try to keep, those of you who are white-haired in the audience can keep us straight on that, I think. I don't see Podgorny or Chrome, so, or Leidel. Oh, Chrome's in the back.
Chrome's here.
We're in trouble. I don't know how I could miss you, Ron. At any rate, he's here to correct me, of course, and John, and we'll have a little debate now and then, probably. But at least George isn't here, and Leidelmeyer's not here. So, at any rate, we are... I'm going to start with John.
Did everybody get?
Did everyone get one of these organizational conference handouts, the organizational council conference front sheet? This is sort of a collection of John Rupke's library, some of the things that he thought you might be interested in, some old documents, some old pictures, and we thought that perhaps you might be able to be interested in that. We also have the 25-year anniversary book that John and I worked on a number of years ago.
10 years.
10 years ago. And at any rate, John and I disagreed on when we met. John felt I met him in a meeting in 1966 in San Francisco. I don't recall that. His memory's a lot better than mine.
He's charitable.
I remember meeting him in Grand Rapids when I came there after starting the emergency department full-time at St. Lawrence Hospital in Lansing. I went up there to find out how things are done, and I figured I'd go to John Rupke to find that out. I heard that he was an expert. And at that time, he introduced me to a billing company called the Medical Ancillary Corporation. And the Medical Ancillary Corporation was strictly a billing company for emergency docs. And that billing company was led by Peter Maravileas and his wife, Maria. And so John told me about that. I started the billing firm. I started with the billing firm at that time. And then the next meeting I remember, we talked about going to various meetings to educate ourselves. And we went to ACS trauma meetings.
In Chicago.
In Chicago. And all they talk about was, you know, an emergency was, you know, if I drop something in the operating room or whatever. And we didn't really talk about the first hour of trauma injuries. And so we were really dissatisfied with that. We decided we ought to do something about it. We met in Lansing in March of '68, and over a brew or two, we decided that we'd form an organization. And we discussed, what kind of an organization will it be? John says, well, we could form a multi-corporation and have all these hospitals joining together, and we can staff all these hospitals and make lots of money. Sort of a Mangold approach. And I thought, well, that's a good idea, John, but really what I need personally, and it's very selfish, is I need to know what the hell I'm doing in the emergency department. I need to know how to be trained to be a good emergency doc. I want to be the best when I know how. And he says, yeah, you're right. And so we finally agreed that we ought to have an organization that was directed toward training. That was a primary goal. Yes, there were just two of us in the...
That's right.
In the airport at Lansing, airport bar at the Lansing.
Things go better.
You go better with Schlitz, is that the way it is? At any rate, so we decided to do that, and then we said, well, who are we going to invite? We didn't know anybody. He knew a couple people. He knew John Rogers from Livonia, and then we asked Peter Maravileas, the billing agent, and he gave us names. And so I sat down with a typewriter and started to type, and I really couldn't type, so I finally got on the phone and called everybody and invited them to a meeting. I also sat down and with my licensed practical nurse, we went through various constitution bylaws of radiology and general practice and a few others, kind of took all of that together and formed our constitution and bylaws, wrote the purposes, and then we were ready for our first meeting. John, what happened at the first meeting?
Well, at the first meeting, you can see here on this page right here, that's where the chief actors were involved, and you can see that there's only 2 of these now that are now still in ACEP.
Still around, anyway.
Yeah. And he already discussed the academy versus the college. And Rogers was the one who really made, what was Rogers' remark about college?
He says, we don't want to have anything to do with family practice or general practice. So if you call yourself an academy, you're just saying you're another GP. You know, if you say you're a college, that means something.
Now, Fink came from Ann Arbor, and he talked about modifying the purposes.
Right.
And he was filling in for the head of the department down there, which was Robert, can't remember his last name.
Either.
He never did come. He had heart trouble, and probably just as well that he didn't get stressed over there, because there was an exchange of information, spirited exchange of information. Lingenfelter took umbrage at our decision to have osteopaths, and he never showed again.
Got mad and walked out.
Yeah. And then there was an argument about only full-time emergency medicine physicians. And this went down to a flaming count because we didn't have full-time emergency physicians. Most of the hospitals in the country were run by the staff. And if you were on the active staff and you were under the age of 65, then you had your rotation in there. So who were the most nervous ones when they had to rotate in the emergency department?
Psychiatrist.
And dermatologists.
Dermatologist, right. Right.
So,
I have a story about that. I was working in the emergency department at St. Lawrence, and I was going off at 5 o'clock, and the dermatologist was coming on to relieve me. And I heard him tell the nurse, I'm going to go upstairs to sleep, and if you have a life-threatening rash, call me.
So then we incorporated, and we elected officers. I nominated Wiegenstein. I have never had reason to regret that, and I also closed nominations at the same time.
I don't think that's according. That's not according to the book of
Sturgis.
Sturgis, thank you.
But Sturgis does have this basic thrust, though, that whatever you do in good faith is appropriate. And so that was appropriate.
Right.
John, Leidelmeyer.
Oh, Mayor. Well, we read shortly after this meeting, and this was like a month or 2 after the meeting, we read in some national publication, I think it was the Medical World News or somewhere, there was a pictorial article that featured Reinald Leidelmeyer from Fairfax, Virginia. And he was talking about his emergency department. He had a full-time group there, and how he felt it was so important that there be an organization of emergency physicians. We said, wow, we're here. I mean, we better tell them about it. You know, there were only 8 of us at that time. And so we called Reinald and invited him to our next board meeting. And Reinald came down to Lansing, and I think at that time we were meeting in the basement of Michigan State Medical Society. Needless to say, Reinald was unimpressed. And we had a box for the desk and that sort of thing. And so he thought it was kind of a shabby organization. So he said, well, I'm going to go back to Virginia and I'm going to have a real first meeting. And so a lot of people had written him, just like I did, on that national article. And so we realized that he was going to go back and start an organization. We felt, you know, we really got to have a good name, and we have a good start. And what we really need are membership cards, application blanks, maybe a brochure, and etc. And so we went to Peter and Maria Maravelez and said, look, we need to come up with that. And they said, well, you need a design. So I went to Herb Auer, who was he was the editor of Michigan Medicine, which is the Michigan journal. And I told him, he said, what kind of a logo do you want? And I said, well, I want something modern. I really don't want anything with snakes on it.
That's exactly what he said.
Yeah. And what I really want is something that looks progressive, etc. So he came back with this design, which we have today. And the meaning behind that, he said, was that this is organized medicine in all its parts, all these squares. There's one important one missing. And that important one missing is the American College of Emergency Physicians. He tipped the square up on an edge and made a diamond to dot the I of American College of Emergency Physicians. That sort of didn't continue in a lot of our documents after that, but at the beginning, and I think on the first page here, I guess they're gone, that you have in front of you, is a design. We thought they would miss the implication of that, so we have little dotted lines going up from the dot and up there to show where the I is. You know, that was our first brochure that AMA helped us develop when we had that meeting in '69. But that was the implication that we didn't want them to miss.
Once again, there was no significance to its actual location on the logo?
No, it was just sort of a design.
We became number 23, but this is not number 23 on there.
And that doesn't, and the number of blocks have no significance either, because we had no idea how many parts of medicine there were at the time. But you know, it turned out to be that subsequently, I'm not sure if that emblem is the same today. The block might be not the same. Is it the same? Okay. Well, at any rate, that was the story of the logo. So we went to the presses, okay? We printed this.
You're right. It has good over one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That was the movement of that square was probably for aesthetic purposes by a college student. This was the first membership card, and it was you see it was a punch out, and it had a little statement on it. John, read it because I don't have my glasses.
It said, to promote and maintain the ethical standards of private practice in emergency medicine and surgery. Tell about the surgeons.
The surgeons didn't like that at all. And the surgeons said, they're going to take their damn patients right from the emergency room right up into the operating room. We got to be opposed to them. Anyway, and this was the brochure that we sent out. We came to Virginia with. So we had this, and an application blank, which I can't find. I do have it somewhere. And we had those documents to lay on Reinald when we got to Virginia. So there was about 28 people there.
Yeah. It was at the Twin Bridges. It was across the creek over there. And